It is time to get out of pocket. Yes, I'm your host, Michael Davis, and we are live on Boom Broadcasting right now. The reason we go live is so you guys can be a part of the show, engage, drop something in the comments. You get a shout out live on air with us. And we had a segment last week returning a beloved segment I started a couple years ago when Out of Pocket was at its inception, and that is the top quarter rankings. If you missed last week's episode, then this is how it works. Top quarter. What's a quarter of the 32 NFL teams? It's 8. So that means we're ranking the top 8 teams of the NFL season after week 2. Now, I will go ahead and say this. When it comes to my top quarter rankings, this is probably the most it will change in quite some time because this was gross. If you want to look at what we had last week when it came to our top quarter rankings, we had the Chiefs at 1. We had the 49ers, the Cowboys, Lions, Eagles, Texans, Ravens, and Saints. Now, the reason this looks different, I want to say hi to Rick 8-Bit watching live on YouTube, and you can be just like Rick 8-Bit if you comment in the YouTube section, get a shout out live on air just like Rick did. I want to say about my top quarter rankings from last week, that was after week 1. And now that we've went through week 2, 4 of those top 5 teams lost this past week. 5 of those 8 teams lost this week. And so it's going to be quite a shakeup. Wayne's like, well, I know the Ravens aren't there anymore. And Wayne, don't get your hopes too low or too high, but I got to go ahead and get into my week 2 top quarter rankings, ranking the top 8 NFL teams. And I might as well go ahead and start with team number 8. And this team, actually, they did lose this past week in week 2. I got the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions, yes, they did lose. But I'll be honest, if I couldn't use any of those 4, those top 5 teams, I would have been going insane because then you're putting, well, I don't want to let you guys know who I left out quite yet, but it was a home loss for the Detroit Lions, losing 20-16 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They still had the better passer. They still had the better runner. They still had the better receiver when it comes to, how many yards you gain, but they just couldn't end drives. They couldn't punch it in the end zone. Jared Goff picked off twice, and for whatever reason, the Detroit Lions lost at home to an NFC team that is hot right now. Baker Mayfield playing some of his best ball after his career resurged last year with Dave Canales as his coordinator. Now Dave Canales is the coach in Carolina. We're going to have Aaron, a Panthers fan, to, 24 hours after the big Bryce Young benching news, we'll have him on here soon. But Detroit staying at 8. They stay in my top quarter rankings because I had to get this team in there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat Detroit this past Sunday. And, I didn't see it. And to be honest, there's no reason why Tampa should be 2-0, but it's the way they've won. When you win by 3 scores against any team in the NFL, we need to take notice of you. They did that opening night against the Washington Commanders. But then you go on the road and beat a team that was in the NFC Championship game. That is what impressed me enough to have Tampa Bay in my top quarter rankings and making their debut for the first down. Now, here's the interesting thing. Tampa, who knows if they'll be there long term. Tampa Bay, what they have coming up is the Broncos. That should be a win, especially since it's in Tampa Bay. But then they have the Eagles. They have the Atlanta Falcons on the road. They have the Saints on the road. They have the Ravens, who I'm sure will correct whatever's going on in the Baltimore organization right now by October 21st. So it's no easy stretch for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But for now, they end up 7th on my top quarter rankings. Coming up next, we have the Buffalo Bills. Now, I swear I have said for the last 3 years that this would be the season that the Buffalo Bills have their demise. It doesn't seem like that's the case right now. After Thursday Night Football, Buffalo was showing up and showing out against the Miami Dolphins. Tua didn't look good. And it was even worse when Tua got injured, got concussed. This 31-10 blowout happened before Tua Tagovailoa left the game. Okay, this wasn't a fluke win. The Buffalo Bills were able to dominate with James Cook on the ground. Two rushing touchdowns and an additional receiving touchdown for James Cook. I'm sure fantasy owners, if you had him on your team, you love that. Josh Allen was able to not have to carry the team on his back. Okay, just 2 carries, 2 yards. Just 139 passing yards and touchdown. He didn't have to carry this team on his back because the defense was showing up and showing out. Damar Hamlin, 10 tackles. Balin Spector, 10 tackles. Dorian Williams, 10 tackles. When you have 3 guys with double-digit tackles on the road against your division rival, that's good. And on top of that, the Buffalo Bills still haven't replaced Stephon Diggs. That rookie wide receiver, Keon Coleman's done next to nothing his first 2 games. Once he starts acclimating more to the game, once Curtis Samuel shows that he's a veteran, they won't have to fully rely on James Cook. But to rely on James Cook and to rely on a defense to slow a high-powered, high-octane offense in Miami down, that's what lands Buffalo in my top quarter rankings for the first time. Aaron's like, I swear if you somehow put the Cowboys in here, I'm going to mute you. Well, that would be terrible, Aaron. Don't know how you would do that. But you'll have to see who I got 5 through 1. Wayne saying respect to Hamlin playing well after some questions about his skill set. I fully agree. Especially all the health things that happened to Damar Hamlin in the last couple of years for him to bounce back and have a game like he did. Now, Aaron says he'll mute me. I don't know how he'll do that. He's not even in studio yet. But there is a team that I have to put at number 5, even if they lost this past week. And I have the San Francisco 49ers, not the Dallas Cowboys, coming at number 5. I got the 49ers. I have been a huge advocate, even though they have creamed my team in the playoffs, 2 of the last 3 years. They have Dallas's number, but I cannot leave San Francisco out of my top quarter rankings. They were second last week, right behind Kansas City. Wayne's got the popcorn ready. He's gearing up for these top quarter rankings. But I got San Fran. They're missing Christian McCaffrey, but they're still finding ground production from Jordan Mason. 20 carries, 100 yards. That's averaging 5 yards a carry. On the road, that's pretty good. Deebo Samuel's hurt. He'll miss some time, but you still have George Kittle. You re-signed Brandon Ayuk. You paid Brandon Ayuk to show up in these moments. Maybe the 49ers do move on from Deebo Samuel in the offseason, and they decide to make Brandon Ayuk their number 1 receiver moving forward. They got to clean up some of the fumbles. They got to hold on to the ball. They didn't get hurt by those fumbles. They fumbled 3 times. They only lost 1. Brock Purdy, an interception, but he made up for that with 319 passing yards, which is pretty good for Brock Purdy. They just fell short in Minnesota, which leads me to a team that is making their debut in the top quarter rankings. If I put San Fran in here, much like I put the Lions in here, I have to put the team that beat them above them. So Tampa's above Detroit, and Minnesota is above San Francisco. Now, I mentioned Aaron Schneider is going to come in here in a few minutes, and we'll talk the Bryce Young benching in a little more depth. That was breaking news when we talked about it yesterday. I want a Panthers fan to help me dive into more of that. I covered the Panthers last year, but it's always great to get Panthers fans' perspective, especially when he was a huge CJ Stroud guy. But one of the guys who did quarterback for the Carolina Panthers is finding success elsewhere. And he also quarterbacked for the 49ers as a backup. I'm talking about Sam Darnold. I'll tell you exactly why I think Minnesota's done great with Sam Darnold. And I'll just go ahead and say it. I think Sam Darnold is Kirk Cousins 2.0, and it works. And he's playing just so comfortably. If we remember how Kirk Cousins looked in Washington, Washington wasn't sold on him. You know, everywhere Sam Darnold's been, nobody's been sold on him. And people probably say he's even been bad. But when it comes to his time in Minnesota, Kirk Cousins, he was putting his team in position to win games. And Sam Darnold's done the exact same thing for Minnesota at the beginning of the year. They're 2-0. And I was like, okay, you beat the Giants 28-6 at home or on the road. You know, so what? You know, anyone can beat the Giants, and I hope that ages well. But to beat the 49ers, who I had as the second best team in the NFL last week, it's pretty evident that you got to have the Minnesota Vikings in here. Wayne says he loves the Darnold Cousins comparison. Well done. Hopefully Aaron agrees in the same way. We'll get his take on that. But Minnesota's 2-0. They beat a weaker team the first week, but they beat one of my top core ranking teams previously. And so Minnesota lands in the top core rankings. And so, speaking of one of my top core ranking teams from last week losing, at number 3, I have the New Orleans Saints. And I've heard it all. We covered this more in depth on Dad and the Boys that dropped at a new start time of 3 p.m. Eastern today. I had the New Orleans Saints in my top core rankings last week. If you don't believe me, I flashed it up on the screen to begin the show, and I want to say I told you so. I told you any team that can win a pro football game 47-10 needs to be taken seriously. Now, did I expect them to go into Dallas and handle the Cowboys like they did? No, I did not. But if you are not putting respect on the New Orleans Saints right now, let me just tell you exactly why you need to put respect on the Saints. The Dallas Cowboys haven't lost a regular season home game in 2 years. And that previous guy is now calling the games in the booth. That's Tom Brady. That was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was the defending Super Bowl champions at the time. And for the Saints to go into a hostile environment in Jerry's world and just make the Dallas Cowboys chase all game long. And when you also look at Alvin Kamara playing like he's 23 years old again and he's approaching 30. You have Derek Carr, who has a revived career, it appears, in New Orleans, especially with Kubiak, the son of Gary Kubiak, as his offensive coordinator, the motions they're running now, the speed they have with Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave being a legit number 1 wide receiver, and a defense that showed up. They really showed up, and they made it tough for the Dallas Cowboys, whether it was Alontae Taylor, where it was Demario Davis who turned back the clock, Carl Granderson, 1.5 sacks this game, Chase Young, who has revived his career down in New Orleans. Like, this is a legit Saints team, and it was a tough test. Gotta be Texans at 2, Chiefs at 1. Anything else is way out of pocket. Well, Aaron, you're going to be here in a few minutes. I don't know how you're going to take this. Jackson Carr's year has arrived. It looks like it. When you look at what Derek Carr has done thus far, Derek Carr through 2 games, 76.9% completion percentage, 443 yards, 5 touchdowns to 1 interception. His passer rating through 2 games. Yes, one of them was against the Panthers, but the other was against a legit defense in Dallas. His passer rating is 142.4 in his first 2 games. So, very, very great candidate for comeback player of the year. And Aaron, I'm going to have a comeback to your comment. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I got the Houston Texans at number 2. And I know I'm about to hear I told you so when Aaron comes on and talks about CJ Stroud. But how can you not have Houston in your top 2 or top 3? But for me personally, it's top 2. I underestimated them against the division rival, the Colts. I underestimated them against the Chicago Bears, but they seem to have put it all together. And there was a moment where CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams had coming off the field, and CJ Stroud pulled Caleb in and encouraged him. How can you not root for that? I mean, that is a veteran move by a second-year quarterback. And for CJ Stroud to uplift a guy like Caleb Williams, who, is in a situation last couple of nights ago where he just lost on the road to a really good team in Houston. And for Houston to not only do this with CJ Stroud, but they didn't have a strong running game. Joe Mixon didn't have a great game, but they relied on Nico Collins to show up. Stephon Diggs, played a little bit. Tank Dell didn't even show up. And again, they relied on their defense, 3 guys in double-digit tackle range. And so, yeah, Houston's number 2. Kansas City, number 1. Number 1. Aaron called it just right. Wayne said, y'all say I was out of pocket when I said Stroud MVP year. So far, I'll give it to you. Very good stuff. Jack saying great coach in Texans. That is obviously a part of it. But I mean, Kansas City has beat 2 legit AFC teams in the Baltimore Ravens. Sorry, Wayne. And the Cincinnati Bengals. And Joe Burrow always plays Kansas City strong. So there is no doubt Kansas City has deserved and has earned that number 1 spot. And I would even go as far as say, like, if Kansas City were to lose, their upcoming game, if the Kansas City Chiefs were to, say lose in Atlanta on Sunday night next week, I don't even know if I'm moving them from this top spot. I'm just saying, because until you really convince me that Kansas City is not atop the NFL as back-to-back Super Bowl champions, I don't know what to tell you. Aaron says, Wayne, I want it to be known I didn't say you were out of pocket for that Stroud MVP take. Aaron has been a big CJ Stroud backer throughout this entire time. And so why not bring him in right now and ask him really quick about these top quarter rankings? Aaron, I'm going to actually cover my face instead of yours because you might have the opportunity to tell me that you told me so when it comes to this. You predicted my top 2 teams well, so I'm hoping you agree with most of my list.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid list. Vikings at 4 feels a little high. I get having them in the top 8. That makes sense, but yeah, I'm gonna say I told you so. I was right about CJ Stroud. I kind of wish I wasn't as right as I was, though, because for Carolina to miss out on what was clearly a great quarterback is a hard thing to take as a Panthers fan, but just as a person being right, like so right about a certain take is nice. But as a fan, I kind of wish I was wrong now.
And dude, it's been a busy time for the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, Bryce Young benched. They're moving to Andy Dalton. This is worst case scenario after drafting Bryce Young number 1 overall just a year ago. We talked about this on Out Pocket, but I wanted to give him more time because we had a stacked show yesterday, and this deserves more time, and it also deserves a Panthers fan perspective who wanted CJ Stroud in Carolina. Were you taken back by the Panthers benching Bryce Young yesterday?
I was honestly surprised because Dave Canales has said in press conferences that they're sticking with Bryce Young. So this, to me, doesn't feel like an entirely Dave Canales decision. This almost reeks of David Tepper getting more involved in the football side of things again, because it's mind-boggling to me that Dave Canales would give up on a second-year quarterback after 2 games. This doesn't feel like he made this decision on his own. It feels like Tepper came down and told him, hey, you got to put Andy Dalton in.
That would be surprising because if I've thought of any guy who's backed Bryce Young, I mean, David Tepper, but I mean, I wouldn't even say this is a well-run organization by Tepper.
Absolutely not. He has been awful. There have been press conferences about the Panthers where he just brags about bringing concerts to Bank of America Stadium, which is ridiculous. You are running the most laughable team in the NFL right now, and you're talking about bringing concerts to the stadium. You've got to get it together.
And people have been like, "Oh, Jared Jones is a bad owner. Does he care about winning?" The Cowboys have been winning. I mean, I know Sunday wasn't a great reflection of that, but you can be in the headlines. You can, as long as your team is winning. Jerry has been in the headlines no matter what, but at least the team's winning mainly over the last few years. David Tepper hasn't established any winning ways in Carolina, and I feel like that hurts his status as an owner.
It's terrible. Since he bought the team, the Panthers have the worst record in the league. And the only time since he has been the owner that this team had any shred of identity or momentum is when Steve Wilks was the interim head coach, almost got Carolina to the playoffs, had a 500 record as the interim head coach that year, and they don't hire him, and instead they hire Frank Reich, who was abysmal. So I think Carolina might not be great if they had Wilkes, but I think they would be a significantly better run team and a team that had some culture or just some kind of energy, because Wilkes felt like a player's coach. I felt like players could really rally behind him, and that's not to say that they won't rally behind Dave Canales, but he was already kind of established in Carolina. He'd been a defensive coordinator there before. He played at App State. It felt like there would have just been some energy around the team, which we've been lacking for so long.
And it's very interesting you date all the way back to Steve Wilks. I mean, he took over in the interim for Matt Rule, who was fired there in 2022 season. And Steve Wilks ends up going 6-6. And they finished second in the division. You think it's going to be Steve Wilks, but they decide to go for another Panther or former Panther player in Frank Wright, but he doesn't even last a full season. And then you fire him for another interim with your rookie quarterback. And then you don't bring that interim back. And so now you have, Bryce Young's third head coach in what, 19 games, 18, 19 games. Like this is Aaron. This isn't how you help a rookie quarterback.
No, we're putting him in what is almost the worst scenario possible. He's gone through 3 head coaches in 18 games. No one is succeeding in this situation, and that's not to say that Bryce Young has not been bad. There have been plenty of plays where he should have hit the receiver, bad throws where it's been an interception. It's not to take all the blame off of him and fully put it on the lack of coaching stability. It's a mixed bag. He has been at fault for a lot, but he's also been put in a horrendous situation where I doubt anyone succeeds.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second because, obviously their careers are going to be tied together and it's going to be a huge reflection on what happens moving forward. But CJ Stroud was picked right after Bryce Young last year. You were a huge CJ Stroud backer. You wanted CJ Stroud in Carolina. I'm sure that opinion hasn't changed. But Aaron, as much as I want to say CJ Stroud is a good quarterback, and I will on here, I still feel like I can't pin this all on Bryce Young. But if you also look at it, Houston was pretty bad before, CJ Stroud got there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost a catch-22 of we'll never know exactly But how everything's shaped up, it doesn't look like the Carolina Panthers made the right choice.
No, it is not looking good. And what I'm concerned about is Carolina's going to bail on Bryce Young, and he's going to go to a functioning franchise and will actually find some type of success. Like, I think this is the best that Sam Darnold has looked in his entire career. When he was in Carolina, he didn't have any flashes of being an actual legitimate starter in the league. And I feel like he has with Minnesota. So I'm just worried that Carolina's going to bail on Bryce Young and it's going to end up biting him.
Well, I mean, and you look at, who's been at quarterback for the Carolina Panthers recently, Baker Mayfield, who I didn't believe in, and now he's in Tampa Bay and he's 2-0. He's playing for your division rival. Sam Darnold, you mentioned, and I want to touch on Sam Darnold too, because I also brought this up earlier, that Sam Darnold is honestly, Sam Darnold's honestly like Kirk Cousins 2.0. Wayne said I was pretty much in pocket of that. And the whole reason I'm saying this, Aaron, is Kirk Cousins got this team, no matter what was in front of them, in position to succeed. Like, it just seemed to gel well, whoever the coach was there, whether it was Zimmer's time, so on and so forth. And now Cousins is obviously left. Like, the organization wanted to move in a new direction. J.J. McCarthy drafted him in the first round. But McCarthy's hurt. The backup, Sam Darnold. But it literally feels like Kirk Cousins 2.0 of the backup guy having a chance to shine, has Justin Jefferson. And even when Justin Jefferson gets hurt, like, Sam Darnold can put the team on his back and be a quality opponent any given Sunday. And that's what you want in a backup quarterback. But I will add this caveat. If Sam Darnold actually keeps performing well and they remain on this trajectory and maybe even make the playoffs, I wouldn't even be surprised if the Vikings take a Green Bay Packers approach or a Kansas City Chiefs approach where they let Alex Smith or Aaron Rodgers keep on playing while a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Jordan Love continues to sit. I could see that same situation with Minnesota when it comes to Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you, and I think that would be beneficial for McCarthy's development and for what really I think rookie quarterbacks shouldn't be thrown into starting out of the gate. I think it's more often than not that we see them struggle and not excel. So even if it's just like half a season where a healthy JJ McCarthy sits behind Darnold, I think it will be beneficial. My only concern with Darnold, I don't think you're out of pocket. I'm inclined to say you're in pocket with this. I'm worried that a Justin Jefferson-less Vikings will not look that great. I'm not fully convinced on Darnold's ability to really carry a team to victory without such an elite weapon like Justin Jefferson.
Dude, and it could be tough. Like, I'm not entirely convinced on Aaron Jones as a solid running back option. I'm not entirely convinced Jordan Addison can step up. I'm having more and more questions about Jordan Addison in terms of off the field production as well as his own health, which hasn't been 100%, and we're already 2 weeks in to the year. But guys, I would watch out for Sam Darnold, and this not being the only time he starts. Jason, no Addison either. Can Sam I Am be that guy? I think he can, Aaron.
It looks like he has the potential. I'm not sold on it, and until I actually see it happen, I just don't think that he'll be able to do it until I'm actually watching it happen with my own two eyes.
Well, keep on watching because Minnesota's in top core rankings, and who knows how long they Okay, who
Well,
threw?
let's talk about it, Michael. Let's talk about
it. No. Andrew, this was totally out of pocket.
Oh no, it wasn't. I can I can pull up the scorecard if you want me to.
Why would we have to do that?
Let's do that.
Is Aaron taking over producer of Out of Pocket?
I'm gonna hijack it for a little bit if I can get signed in to my
Oh wow.
ESPN account.
Wow, he's probably filling a vacancy we've had over the last couple months. I've been playing double duty. Jason asking who's coming out of the NFC. Vikings have a shot to be in the mix. I still think it's San Francisco. There's no reason for me to think otherwise if they get healthy. If they don't get healthy, I still don't think it Minnesota. I don't think there's a Super Bowl necessarily in their midst, but I wouldn't be surprised that I don't want to say New Orleans. As good as they've looked, they've looked phenomenal. I wouldn't say New Orleans, but there's so many teams.
Took you a minute.
There's so many teams that 1-1, as I was saying. So this is why we do live shows. Andrew asked, how are your fantasy teams doing? He was obviously a plant by Aaron. But let me explain this. Look, scroll down. I got lost by 15. Tua gets hurt. Okay. Not fair at all, by the way. Justin Jefferson.
That's fantasy football, man.
Justin Jefferson gets hurt. Xavier Worthy craps the bed. Travis Kelce craps the bed. DJ Moore, he didn't entirely crap the bed, but he was pretty close. And my only luck was Keon Coleman had a goose egg for you. But
the Cowboys put up negative points. They actively hurt my team, and Mixon crapped the bed too.
But dude, when you have J.K. Dobbins getting 20, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe, getting 20 as well. Dude,
what can I say? I'm just better.
Okay, well, I'm 0-2 in both.
Oh, wait, is that you in dead last, actually? Let's check the standings real quick. Oh, it's not. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm not. That's Carson. Carson's in dead last.
Carson. Oh,
and then Mike
Carson.
But look, Wayne was in Wayne. Shout out to Wayne. He was in the number one spot. Do you have an answer to Jason's question, Aaron, about potentially who's coming out of the NFC?
Like winning the NFC Championship?
Yeah.
I'm inclined to still back Detroit, honestly. I think they'll get it together. If I'm putting money on a team, I'm putting money on Detroit.
Well, and this would be the moment to do it with all the health and all the teams there. But I did want to ask you before we move on from quarterbacks who have played in Carolina. We've talked about Sam Darnold. Wanted to throw it back real quick because I never did ask you before Andrew's out of pocket comment on YouTube. Aaron, do you think we could see Bryce Young go somewhere else? I mean, Tua's on IR right now. He'll miss at least 4 games. Who knows what his status is with a concussion? Miami is in win now mode. Do you think the Dolphins can propel themselves and decide, hey, let's take a flyer on a former number 1 overall pick?
I don't think Carolina trades Bryce Young, not during the season. I think we're going to see Bryce Young starting again at some point this season. I don't think that this is the end of his time as the starter in Carolina. That would just be so absurd to quit on a quarterback after 18 games and then trade him during his second season. You've given him no stability in coaching. The offensive line's finally better. It's still not great, but you're giving him a little bit of stuff to work with. And granted, he has struggled in these 2 games, but you do not quit on a number 1 overall pick after 18 games. I think if he's still playing this bad at the end of the season, I think that it's possible we see him moved in the offseason, but I think there's a 0% chance that Bryce Young gets moved during the season.
Is there a number, like, if you would be like, "Hey, this is way too good to give up?"
I
I
don't
don't kn
know. I would have to seriously think about that. It would take some solid draft capital or players. I honestly have no idea. That's not something I can really answer on the spot. I would have to really sit and think about that.
we might throw you in a, trade simulator here soon, with, Bryce Young. Dude, I don't even know, like, I've had 24 hours sit on this. I think Miami could call and inquire and see what's happening.
They could call. I think Carolina hangs up in 5 seconds as soon as the Dolphins will say, "Hey, can we trade for Bryce Young?" Click, gone.
You think it's that quick of a
I
hang-up?
think it would be that quick. If they called like right now, I think it ends that quick.
Oh, no, that was Chinese food. Never mind. It wasn't the, Miami Dolphins calling or the Carolina Panthers calling, or Nick Sirianni calling Saquon's number, not to run the ball, but to throw it. Now, here I'll say 2 things. 1, never, ever, this is just a tip, never ever text me when your team plays 24 hours later, because you never know how much trash you talk on Sunday just to, come up short at home on Monday. Just FYI, you know who you are. Secondly, dude, there's no reason Philadelphia should have lost this game. I had them winning this game. I continue my bad string of predictions. Jason's going to finish Crown Friday, and I'm just trying to figure out how I can beat him. Wayne won the previous week. It's pretty bleak when it comes to my predictions. But how do you not just run the ball? And in addition to that, the Philadelphia Eagles know notoriously for the tush push that gets you 2-3 yards at a time. Like it was literally set up for Philadelphia to win. And somehow, some way, they hand the ball and they hand the win to Atlanta. And dude, people are jumping down Saquon's throat for dropping that ball, but I put all of this on Nick Sirianni.
I Look, it's ridiculous they passed the ball in that situation. Atlanta was out of timeouts. You can run the clock down a good amount. If you want to go for it on fourth, go for it. If you don't get it, then Atlanta has less than a minute to go the entire length of the field. And I do not believe in that Falcons offense to move that far that fast. But to your point about putting all the blame on Sirianni and the play call, Saquon should have caught it at the end of the day. It was a bad play call, but it hit him right in the hands. And that's just inexcusable to have a drop in that kind of situation.
But you would even I would even go as far as, if he catches it, does the defender not tackle him before he gets to the line to gain?
He has I feel like he had a very good chance to get the first down or like fourth and inches. And in that case, you tush push it and run the clock out. Like I said before, that leaves it, if you don't get the fourth down conversion, that leaves Atlanta going the whole way down the field with maybe a minute. And with no timeouts, I don't think they get that done. So even if Saquon gets tackled before the first down line, he still should have caught it. Ultimately, it was a terrible drop.
And I know they've invested a lot to go get Saquon Barkley and make that difference for Philadelphia. But dude, I saw this. I saw this at the end of last year. Eagles fans, sometimes a little bit fickle, no offense, but they start losing confidence. They started losing faith in Nick Sirianni. And I don't think last night did any favors to that.
It really did, and it's a bad look for Sirianni with the play call. It's a bad look for the big new addition in Saquon. It it's rough. Atlanta team, I think Philly's a lot better than them. I feel like they should have handled that game and won by a fair amount. them losing to Atlanta is ridiculous. I on my Instagram account, Football and More, that I run with Chris, I went 8-8 for week 2 predictions. That's terrible. That might be tied for the worst week I've ever had because the Eagles absolutely blew it against the Falcons in a game that I felt was incredibly winnable for them.
Well, dude, you haven't done worse in prediction than I have. Like
I
this,
have not.
this is embarrassing. I don't know, man. I've been thinking about it. Like, I've thought about maybe will study a little bit more and look at all the weird metrics and see who converts 3rd and 6s more than 3rd and 3s. Like really diving and digging deep. But I'm also like, you know what? Let me go against my gut because I can't trust my gut right now. Maybe I just picked the most outlandish teams, and if I actually hit those, I'll be like, all right, great.
I mean, look, you picked the Bears over the Texans. That was ridiculous. I mean, you deserve to have the worst prediction record for that. Granted, that was a close game. That made me a little uncomfortable. I didn't like it. That wasn't great from Houston, but still.
Dude, I was close. Like I feel like legitimately I got close with some of these predictions. I really did because Chicago against Houston, like, they went down to the wire. You had Chiefs and Bengals. I got that one right. Steelers Broncos was a 7-point game. Rams Cardinals, I wasn't even close. We only had one of our guys get that one right. You had San Fran, Minnesota. I don't think we picked that game, but I would pick San Fran in that situation. Colts, Packers, dude. How did the Colts lose to Green Bay when Malik Willis is the quarterback? There were just some weird games and how they ended up.
With the Colts Packers, I think that Anthony Richardson's ability as like an accurate passer has to be drawn into question after 3 interceptions. The guy has an absolute cannon of an arm and can make some insane throws. But to throw 3 interceptions, I mean, the Packers have a really good secondary, but you got to be better than that. I think that's what really sold the game for Indy was just a abysmal passing stop.
Yeah, stop.
Yeah.
They're not even in the league anymore. I don't know who the Redskins are. If you're talking about that Washington team, nah, no shot, buddy. No shot. Calm down. Just enjoy it while you last, Jane Daniels still waiting for his first passing touchdown. That's cool. That's cool. And we'll see what they do Monday night in Cincinnati. Probably not much.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. The NFC East is just it's weird. I don't think Washington sniffs the playoffs, but there is the thing where no NFC East team wins the division 2 years in a row. So Washington is technically in the running if we want to go based off of that.
I don't like that take. That's out of pocket.
I said
right
no,
there.
I said technically. I didn't say how good of a chance they had. I don't think they have a very good chance, but just going based off of that NFC East statistic, they're technically in the running.
That is fair. No NFC East team has repeated since the Donovan McNabb days, like way back in the early 2000s. So it's between Philly at that point. It's between Washington, and it's never between the Giants. Let's be real.
No, as long as Daniel Jones is at quarterback, they're not winning a single thing.
Well, dude, I'm glad I was not on the gridiron address, not because I don't enjoy it, but because I needed a couple days to really soak in that Cowboys L. But dude, you and Chris killed it this past weekend. So kudos
Appreciate
to
that.
you.
Thanks, man.
Kudos.
It was a fun show. Finally getting to run a live by myself. It was super cool. I liked running the comments. That was fun. I had a really good time.
Dude, it's always a great time when people comment and engaging with us in the comments. But dude, Aaron, I'll let you go. We'll cover some Top Rope Tuesday WWE action. And dude, if you guys have not caught the Gridiron Address. You'll want to go watch it immediately following Out of Pocket. It's available on demand, and Aaron covers more of the games, raw reactions between the afternoon and the primetime games. So you can even go see if they were right about Sunday, which, spoiler alert, they were, and I was not. But that's that's enough for me on Aaron. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much. And it is Top Rope Tuesday now on Out of Pocket. Guys, if you stayed with us throughout this entire live stream, I do have some breaking news for you that goes in to my wrestling podcast tomorrow. Yes, my wrestling podcast tomorrow will involve this breaking news. So stay tuned last few minutes and hear what is coming up. But, you know, I'll get to what's coming up tomorrow. But let's talk about next Monday, more particularly what happened last night on Monday Night Raw. Now, we usually do the nightcap and mouth it off with Mike on vacation. So it really helped me because Mondays are busy. I work at my co-working facility. I get home, I run out of pocket. I, get everything together for Dad and the Boys that drops on Tuesday afternoons. I watch Monday Night Raw. I do the nightcap. I'm going to bed at midnight. And then I'm like, wait, I forgot to eat all day long. But that wasn't the case yesterday. So mouth it off with Mike on vacation. And then that also meant I got a little bit of a vacation. And I wanted to talk about this. This is something I actually missed out on by not doing the nightcap. And so I'm like, I have a Top Rope Tuesday segment. Let me talk about it on Out of Pocket to close the show. Two things that stood out to me. Braun Breaker, Jey Uso wrestling next Monday on Raw for the Intercontinental Championship. And two things stood out to me. One, I know entirely who wins this match next week, and Jey Uso won't be eaten because it's just not his time to win a singles title. But I've been saying for quite some time that Jey Uso wouldn't get tied down to a championship. He wasn't getting tied down to a Money in the Bank briefcase because eventually you need to insert him back into the Bloodline story. That was not the case. That didn't seem to be the case last night. And if you pay attention to what Triple H is doing now on Raw, on SmackDown, you got to pay attention to what they say, how they say it. You got to pay attention to your surroundings when you're watching Raw, backstage area. But there were a lot of comments in this promo that didn't need to be there. That makes me think they're comfortable leaving Jey Uso as a solos guy. Not Solo Sikoa, but as a single star, as a main event player on Monday Night Raw. And here's why. Braun Breaker said he didn't need Scott Steiner. He didn't need Rick Steiner. He didn't need his dad. He didn't need his uncle. He didn't need his family. And Jay rebutted. He's like, I basically don't need my family either. I've been staying on my own, and that's how I like it, and I'm never going back. That sounds like to me that you got to work a little extra harder. If that is the direction WWE wants to go and get Jey Uso inserted back into this, dude, because I'm also looking at War Games, happening in a couple months. Is Jey Uso recruited by Roman Reigns to help fight Solo Sikoa in this bloodline? Where does that go? But also, is the War Games match between the two bloodlines? Or is the War Games match between the Judgment Day and the previous Judgment Day? Because Jey Uso plays a vital role in both. Obviously, we've talked about Solo Sikoa's bloodline, him, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, Jacob Fatu. And then you got Roman's side. You got Roman, Jimmy Uso, recruiting potentially Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. You got your 4v4 right there. You would need Jey Uso in that match. You don't have the match without Jey Uso. But then in addition to that, you look at Raw. And you're looking at Judgment Day. You're looking at Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, JD McDonough, Carlito, all four of those guys in war games. That's your four. So you look at the other side and you're like Damian Priest, Jey Uso would be in there. Ilya Dragunov showed that he is aligned in some sort of way or fashion with Damian and Rhea and Jay. And then you could throw in a Rey Mysterio to fight against his son. You could go several different ways to get your fourth guy. Or heck, you could even throw Rhea Ripley in there. Liv Morgan probably wouldn't want to throw it herself in there, but you can even throw Rhea Ripley into the mix. Maybe not in this climate, but she could hold her own. Jey Uso is a vital part, but I just don't know what role he will play in 2 months at Survivor Series War Games. But from the promo itself, it doesn't appear Jey Uso is returning to the bloodline. I hope this is a swerve, but they might have told us the result of that. Another thing that stood out, I've been on record of saying this on previous nightcaps, on Drop the Mic. Last week, I reviewed the PWI rankings saying if a guy was too high or too low. And I predicted that Braun Breaker at his position, that is the lowest he will be in the next 10 years. I did not realize just how good Braun Breaker can be. Physically, he's got the look. He's got the skill set. He's got everything. He's got the lineage. And the lineage helped out Randy Orton when he was younger. Now Braun Breaker. He had the rocket strapped to his back in NXT, and he was going to be this baby face, and they might have started using him similar the way they use Roman Reigns as the big dog, and they're like, this isn't working. Let's turn Braun heel. Braun gets to the main roster. He's a heel, and it's working. He's one of the only guys to beat Gunther. He has everything physically. But if you remember a few years ago, Roman Reigns and John Cena were doing a promo battle, and John Cena basically called Roman out. He's like, it's a promo, kid. You're going to have to learn how to do it if you want to be the big dog, if you want to be in this spot. We didn't have that moment last night. Braun Breaker on the microphone stood toe-to-toe with main event Jey Uso. Now, Jey Uso obviously hasn't been a solo star in his entire career until more recently, in the last year or so. But he is a veteran. He's been around the game. He's worked with Roman Reigns, so he knows. He's good cutting a promo. He's good getting the crowd engaged. But Braun Breaker, I did not see this type of promo coming from Braun Breaker. And it makes me think, it makes me believe that Braun Breaker, he will have a really good Intercontinental title run. But similar to what we saw with Gunther, going immediately from the Intercontinental Championship to the World Championship, we're going to see that from Braun Breaker. Breaker's going to hold this title. He's going to hold this title till WrestleMania. He'll probably drop it there to whoever comes up next. He'll win the King of the Ring, and he will follow in Gunther's footsteps and be the World Heavyweight Champion at next year's SummerSlam. Mark my words, that aged well on this Top Rope Tuesday. Now, Out of Pocket has done absolutely fantastic. Boom Broadcasting's done even better. I wanted to share some big news for my wrestling fans. Tomorrow on Drop the Mic, we have an interview because I will be Ferguson, North Carolina, Mount Pleasant Elementary School this Saturday, September 21st. I will have the privilege of commentary with my broadcast partner, Shannon Smith, aka podcast_Smitty, the host of Quick Hits. I will have him beside me as I call the SEC Heavyweight Championship matchup. We have Austin Aries challenging. Yes, Austin Aries, the guy, former WWE superstar, the guy, former TNA wrestler, multiple-time X Division champion, multi-time world champion, former Ring of Honor star, Austin Aries is making the drive down to North Carolina this Saturday in Ferguson to wrestle and challenge the champion Victor Andrews. Victor Andrews, who's been making his trips around. He was in Germany this summer competing. He's literally world-renowned. We got Mr. Everything, Victor Andrews, tomorrow on Drop the Mic at 3 p.m. That's when that interview will be released. I'm super excited because this is going to be a really, really great night. I have gotten to commentate a few good matches and several good cards for SEC this year. I mean, it has been an absolutely fantastic opportunity. Thank you to SEC management. Thank you guys. But I am excited for this one because we have Victor Andrews and Austin Aries. And I've gotten to call an Austin Aries match not too long ago. He won the main event, allowing himself to be in the spot against Victor Andrews and compete for the biggest prize. It's going to be absolutely nuts. You got Victor Andrews versus Austin Aries. You got CeCe Young versus Casey Fox. Casey Fox making her return to defend the SEC Ladies title. You got Lightning Express versus the Territory for the tag team titles. All three championships on the line. Maurice Moss is going to be there. Southside Players. Rage returns with the very crooked Jack De Niro. Joseph Efferhart making his SEC debut. Amp Dominic's going to be back. The Great Sasaki versus Sam Street. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And I'm excited to have Victor Andrews on Drop the Mic tomorrow at 3 p.m. right here on Boom Broadcasting. That's why you guys should subscribe so you don't miss that. Like you shouldn't miss Gridiron Address that's available on demand from this past Sunday. Dad and the Boys drop today at a new start time of 3 p.m. on Tuesdays and Fridays. I'm taking over that 3 p.m. slot, on Tuesdays and Fridays with Dad and the Boys, Wednesdays with Drop the Mic. It's a full recap and review of what happened Sunday when the Saints beat the Cowboys. And then you have the entire lineup for Wednesday. You got Quick Hits, my SEC broadcast partner, podcast_Smitty, with Quick Hits at 9 a.m. You got Sideline Savants, the biggest debut in Boom Broadcasting history, on Wednesday, 12 p.m. on the Boom Broadcasting YouTube channel. Drop the Mic, obviously, with Victor Andrews. And then you got Lombardi Party, the Green Bay Packers podcast. He took a week to, gather his thoughts after that Packers loss, but now the Packers are winning, so Carson's back tomorrow, 6 p.m. And then you have Dugout Debrief Thursday at 12. You have It Stinks Thursday at 10 a.m. before Out of Pocket will be back on Thursday at 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be previewing the App State and the Thursday night football games here on Out of Pocket. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Aaron for great stuff right there. Thank you to Andrew and Jason and Aaron while he was waiting to come in, Jack and Wayne and Rick 8-Bit. Thank you guys for hopping in the comments today. I appreciate you. It doesn't go unnoticed. But guys, that's been Out of Pocket. I'm your host, Michael Davis, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
Well, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you.